I've never told anyone this story before, not the whole truth of it. Even Diane, who's been my best friend since we were awkward preteens with too much hairspray, only knows fragments. I've kept it tucked away for almost 3 years, like a smooth river stone I couldn't stop turning in my palm, sometimes wondering if it had really happened at all. But it did. And now, I think I'm finally ready to let it out. Maybe it's because I turned 50 last month. Or maybe it's because I caught a glimpse of her yesterday, just a passing moment through the foggy glass of a coffee shop in downtown Asheville. But something inside me stirred, and suddenly I knew I had to write this down. All of it. 4 years ago, I walked away from my marriage to Richard after 18 long years. 18 years of slowly shrinking myself to fit into the narrow mold he carved for me. 18 years of excusing the sharp comments, the silences, the nights he stayed out with no explanation. When I finally left, I wasn't shattered, though that might have been easier. I was dimmed, like a painting left in the sun too long, all the color leached away. I remember standing in my new apartment that first night, surrounded by boxes labeled in my neat handwriting, listening to the unfamiliar creaks and groans of the old building, and feeling nothing. No relief, no fear, no sadness. Just a stillness so complete it bordered on hollow. Rebuilding took time. I accepted a promotion at the county library, stepping into the role of director of operations. I returned to hiking on weekends, rediscovering the winding trails of the Blue Ridge Mountains that had once been part of my youth. I began volunteering Thursday nights at Mountain Pet Rescue, bottle-feeding kittens and walking dogs. I carved out a life that felt more like mine, and if it was quiet, a little solitary, I told myself it was exactly what I needed. Then came that June Sunday, nearly 2 years after the ink on the divorce had dried. The shelter was hosting an adoption fair at Carrier Park. The weather was perfect, warm but not heavy, with the sun high and kind, the mountains hazy and blue on the horizon, and the French Broad River catching glints of light like scattered diamonds. I was manning the book sale table, raising a few extra dollars for the library, while helping rehome paperbacks that had outlived their shelf lives. Just as I was thinking about taking a break, I noticed her, a woman weaving through the crowd with a cardboard box in her arms. Something about her movement caught my attention. It wasn't just that she was beautiful, though she was. It was the way she moved, with a kind of quiet urgency, as if she were always heading towards something meaningful. As she came closer, I saw she was probably in her late 20s. Short black curls framed a heart-shaped face, and she wore jean shorts and a faded green t-shirt that read, "Talk nerdy to me." "Excuse me," she said, slightly out of breath. "I'm looking for whoever's in charge of the shelter booth." I pointed toward the blue tent where Marjorie, our volunteer coordinator, was sorting through adoption forms. "Right over there. Is everything okay?" She shifted the box gently in her arms, and I heard a soft chorus of mews from within. "I found some kittens under my porch this morning. I waited, but the mother didn't come back. I didn't know what else to do." Tammy, working the booth next to mine, leaned over. "I can watch your table if you want to go with her," she said kindly. "Sounds like those babies need attention fast." That's how I found myself walking beside this stranger, drawn into her rescue mission. Her name was Jenna Morales, she told me. She worked as a vet tech at a clinic in Charlotte, but was visiting her cousin in Asheville for the weekend. "What brought you to the park today?" she asked, as we dodged a group of children racing past with painted faces. "I volunteer with the shelter," I said. "They needed extra hands, and I'm a sucker for a good cause." She smiled then, a warm, crooked smile that reached all the way to her eyes. A woman after my own heart. We reached the shelter tent where Marjorie took the box of kittens, 4 tiny orange fluff balls no bigger than my palm. While she examined them, Jenna told me more about finding them, and somehow that led to talking about the book she was currently reading, which happened to be one I'd loved. When Marjorie finished her assessment, the kittens were dehydrated, but otherwise healthy. We were deep in conversation. "I should get back to my table," I said reluctantly. "I'll walk with you," Jenna offered. "Unless you think I'll scare off potential readers." I laughed. "On the contrary, you might charm them into buying the whole table. Only the ones worth reading," she replied with a playful glance. We spent the next half hour talking about books, about animals, about the mountains. She told me she played guitar and skateboarded. Badly, but with passion. I mentioned my embroidery hobby, expecting the usual polite nod, but she leaned in with genuine curiosity, asking about threads and patterns like it was the most fascinating thing she'd heard all day. When a small rush of customers came to the book table, she helped me count change and wrap purchases. It felt easy, effortless, like we'd known each other longer than an hour. As the crowd thinned again, I found myself saying, "There's a great coffee shop just down the road if you'd like to continue this conversation sometime. Unless you need to get back to Charlotte right away?" "I'm here until Tuesday," she said, then paused. "Coffee sounds perfect." I scribbled my number on the back of a library bookmark and handed it to her. "Text me when you're free?" She looked at the bookmark a moment, her thumb brushing lightly over my handwriting. "Karen Whitmore," she read aloud. "I'll do that." The next day, we met at Penny Cup Coffee. We talked for hours, until the place was closing around us. She told me about growing up in Florida, about her ex-girlfriend's jealousy, and how even simple friendships had felt like trespasses. I told her about Richard, though I chose gentler versions of the roughest parts. 18 years, she said softly. "That's a whole chapter." "Too long," I admitted. "But I'm starting a new one now." When we parted, she pulled me into a brief hug. It was nothing dramatic, just a moment. But I noticed the clean citrus of her shampoo, the warmth of her cheek near mine, the subtle way I had to tilt my head to meet her height. Driving home, I told myself not to read too much into it. She was younger, by almost 20 years. She lived 2 hours away. It was just kindness between two people who clicked over kittens and conversation. That was all. Then came the text, 3 days later. "Back in Charlotte, missing Asheville's coffee, and the conversation. Jenna." Just 9 words. And still, I smiled like a schoolgirl. I replied without hesitation, and somehow that led to daily exchanges. Texts about books, photos of rescued animals, snippets of our creative hobbies. She'd send me pictures of her pastel sketches. I'd share shots of my embroidery in progress. 2 weeks later, she asked if she could call. Our first conversation lasted 2 hours, until the phone was warm in my hand. After that, it became routine. Messages by day, calls some evenings. She began sending me little voice clips, her softly singing or strumming on her guitar, quiet melodies that lingered in my mind long after they ended. In late July, she said she had a long weekend coming up. "I was thinking of heading back to Asheville," she said lightly. "Any chance you'd be up for more than just coffee?" My heart did something quiet but intense. "What did you have in mind?" I asked. "Hiking. You've talked about those trails like they're part of your soul." That Saturday, I brought her to Craggy Gardens, one of my favorite overlooks on the Blue Ridge Parkway. We hiked the path to the summit, talking the whole way about everything and nothing. At the top, we sat together on a rocky ledge, watching the layered mountains blur into blue. The rhododendrons had faded, but the meadow danced with wildflowers, purple asters, black-eyed Susans nodding in the breeze. "It's even more beautiful than you described," Jenna said, eyes closed, face turned toward the sun. I watched her instead of the view, noticing the small tattoo of a sparrow in flight peeking out from beneath the edge of her tank top, the way her curls shimmered in the fading light. Something was stirring inside me, quiet, unfamiliar, and impossible to ignore. She turned just then and caught my gaze. For a long moment, we looked at each other, and my breath caught in a way that had nothing to do with the altitude. Then she smiled, subtle and knowing. "Take me to your other favorite spots?" We spent the entire weekend together. A hike on Saturday, wandering through downtown Asheville on Sunday. She stayed at a hotel, but we shared every meal. By Sunday evening, it felt as if we'd known each other far longer than a few weeks. When she left to drive back to Charlotte, her goodbye hug lingered. "Thank you for showing me your mountains," she said gently. "They're not really mine," I replied, trying to keep it light. "They are in the way you speak about them." She looked into my eyes. "I'd like to come back again soon, if that's all right." "More than all right," I said, and I meant it. August brought her back twice more. Each visit deepened our connection. Whether we were sharing a trail or laughing over coffee, something between us was growing, glowing just beneath the surface. Every time our hands brushed, I felt a thrill that stayed with me long after. On her third visit, we hiked part of the Mountains to Sea trail. The humidity was thick, the sky heavy with promise. Midway through, the clouds broke open and rain came pouring down. Laughing, we ran for a small wooden shelter tucked off the path, arriving soaked and exhilarated. "Well, we timed that just right," Jenna said, wringing out the edge of her shirt. The shelter was small, the space between us barely a breath. Droplets clung to her lashes, her curls clung to her forehead. I reached out without thinking, gently tucking a damp strand behind her ear. Her breath caught. She looked at me, eyes deep and searching. "Karen," she said, my name spoken like something precious, held carefully. In that moment, everything we'd shared aligned into perfect clarity. I wanted to kiss her, wanted it more than I'd wanted anything in a long time. But I hesitated. She didn't. She took my hand and pressed it softly to her cheek. Her skin was warm, despite the chill of the rain. "I've been waiting for this," she whispered. And then, with a quiet confidence, she leaned in and kissed me. Time paused. Her lips were gentle at first, then more sure as I responded, drawn in like tide to moon. My hands moved instinctively to her waist, steadying us both. Her fingers found my hair, threading through as though she'd always known the way. When we finally parted, I couldn't speak. My thoughts were scattered like raindrops against the roof. "Was that okay?" she asked, a flicker of vulnerability in her voice. I echoed my words from weeks ago. "More than okay." And she laughed, light and unguarded, matching the soft rhythm of the rain above us. We stayed in that shelter for a long while, exchanging kisses and stories, sharing warmth. I told her I had never been with a woman before, that this was new to me in every possible way. She told me she'd felt something from the start. "I just didn't know if you might feel it too," she said quietly. "Or if you could ever imagine someone like me." "Someone like you?" I repeated, curious. "Younger, a woman, not what you're used to." I touched her cheek, gently tracing its curve. Maybe that's exactly why it feels so right. Eventually, the rain slowed, and we returned to the trail, fingers intertwined whenever the path allowed. Everything felt changed, yet perfectly natural. That evening, she came to my apartment instead of her hotel. It wasn't planned. We were going to have dinner and say goodbye. But something unspoken passed between us. We both knew she wouldn't be leaving that night. We moved slowly, learning the shape of each other's presence. In the quiet of my room, lit only by lamplight, we explored one another gently, like uncovering a painting hidden under years of dust. Her closeness felt like something healing, her touch awakening something I hadn't known was still inside me. In the morning, I woke to find her watching me, a softness in her eyes that stirred something deeper than words. "No regrets?" she asked. I shook my head. "None." After she returned to Charlotte, our connection deepened. Daily messages, long calls filled with honesty. We talked about what was happening between us, where it could go. I confessed my fears, the distance, the unknowns, my unfamiliarity with this kind of love. "I don't have all the answers," she told me one night, "but I know how I feel when I'm with you. Like I can finally breathe." "I feel the same," I whispered, lying in the dark, the memory of her still warm in my thoughts. September brought her back to Asheville nearly every weekend. Sometimes we hiked, sometimes we explored the city, sometimes we stayed curled up together in my apartment, the hours slipping by unnoticed. Each visit made her departure harder. Each moment deepened the quiet gravity pulling me toward her. In October, she introduced me to her cousin and a few close friends in Asheville. I was nervous. Would they think I was too old, too ordinary for someone like Jenna? But they embraced me with warmth and humor, and slowly, I began to believe this improbable connection might just be real. Then came Thanksgiving. Jenna invited me to Charlotte to meet her parents, visiting from Florida. I drove down the day before, my stomach twisting with worry. Would they judge me for being nearly 2 decades older than their daughter? A divorced librarian from a quiet town? Her apartment in Noda was all light and color. with art on every wall and plants spilling from every shelf. She met me at the door, her smile a crooked beam of reassurance. "They're going to love you," she whispered, taking my overnight bag. "Just like I do." It was the first time either of us had said it. Love. The word shimmered in the air, full of weight and warmth. "Jenna," I started, but she shook her head gently. "You don't need to say anything yet. I just wanted you to know." But I did have something to say. Standing in that vibrant space filled with her energy, I knew I'd been guarding my heart for too long. "I love you too," I said, softly but surely. "I think I have since that day in the rain." Meeting her parents the next day was unexpectedly comforting. Manuel and Rosa Morales were kind and inquisitive, genuinely interested in my work and background. If they had any doubts about our age difference, they kept them well hidden. After dinner, as Jenna and her mother washed dishes, Manuel pulled me aside. "My daughter hasn't smiled this much in years," he said, his voice low. "Whatever you're doing, thank you. Keep doing it." Tears welled in my eyes. "I will," I promised. That night, lying beside Jenna in the hush of city sounds, I let myself imagine more than just fleeting weekends and phone calls. I pictured mornings together, shared routines, ordinary days turned golden simply because she was there. The thought was both exhilarating and terrifying. In December, we celebrated Christmas with both our families, first in my cozy Asheville home, then in her lively Charlotte gatherings. Wherever we went, familiar questions followed. "How did you two meet? How long has it been?" The truth, at a shelter event, and 6 months, hardly touched the surface of what those months had become for us. In January, one snowy weekend, when she couldn't make the drive, I found myself staring at all the traces she'd left behind in my home. A guitar leaning in the corner, her sketches on the fridge, the tea she favored stacked neatly in the cupboard. I called her that evening. "What would you think about us living together?" There was a pause, brief but long enough for my heart to stutter. Then her voice lit up. "I've been waiting for you to ask," she said, laughter in her tone. "But where would it be? Asheville or Charlotte?" It was a good question. We both had lives rooted in our cities. That 2-hour stretch of highway had become our familiar, if wearisome, routine. But the longing to dissolve that distance had grown undeniable. "I'm not sure yet," I confessed. "I just know I want more than weekends." We spoke for hours that night, gently unfolding possibilities, not reaching a decision, but reaching something just as meaningful, a shared hope. Then, February brought another shift. A job opened at the Asheville Veterinary Hospital, where Jenna had interned years before. When she called to tell me, her voice held a quiet tension, as if daring to hope. It's a lateral move," she said carefully. "Maybe even a slight step down in responsibility, but it would bring you here," I finished. "Yeah." A pause. "What do you think?" What I thought was simple. I wanted her in every corner of my days. I wanted our mornings slow and familiar, our evenings close and steady. But I was also scared. Scared of the weight of that wish. Scared of asking too much. "I think you should apply," I said finally. "But only if it's what you truly want. Not just for us." She got the job. In March, she moved into my apartment. Temporarily, we both said, until we could find a bigger place. Her furniture went into storage, but her energy filled every corner. Her vibrant clothes beside my softer tones. Her art supplies scattered across the dining table. Her laughter echoing through rooms that had sat too quietly for too long. There were adjustments, of course. She was messier, more spontaneous. I thrived on routine and quiet. Our first real argument came 3 weeks in. Something trivial about the dishes that unraveled into deeper questions. Were we too different? Moving too fast? "Maybe this was a mistake," she said, her voice sharp with frustration. And in that moment, everything inside me wavered. "Do you want to leave?" I asked, barely above a whisper. The tension in her face softened. "No," she said, steady now. "No, I want to stay. I want us to figure this out, because you matter to me. We matter." And so we did. We learned to bend, to speak more openly, to give space when it was needed, and closeness when it was craved. By summer, 1 year since that first rain-drenched kiss, We found a rhythm that felt real and lasting. On our anniversary, we returned to the same shelter along the Mountains to Sea trail. The skies were clear this time, but we stopped anyway. Jenna pulled me close, her hands gentle at my waist. 1 year ago, everything changed, she said quietly. I smiled up at her. You changed everything for me. Maybe we changed each other. She kissed me softly, a kiss that spoke of memory and promise. And I wouldn't want it any other way. That summer stretched long and golden, hikes through the mountains, lazy weekends exploring small towns, quiet nights on the balcony with music and shared silence. In August, we found a little rental cottage on the edge of Asheville. It had a fenced yard, sunlight in every window, room for her studio, and a corner where I could work with thread and color. When Diane visited in September, I saw her taking it all in. Not just the house, but me. A version of me that was brighter, more at peace. You look good, Karen, she said as we rocked on the porch swing, watching Jenna laugh with the rescue dog we'd adopted. Better than I've seen you in decades. I feel good, I said honestly. Better than I imagined possible. She studied me. When you told me about Jenna, I had doubts. The age gap, the move. I worried. I worried too, I admitted. But seeing you now... Diane shook her head with a small smile. It works. Somehow, it just works. That night, after Diane had gone to bed, Jenna and I sat outside beneath a sky full of stars, a bottle of wine between us. Your friend approves, she said with a playful smirk, but I could hear the hope behind her words. I laughed. I love her, but this choice was never hers. It matters, though, she said softly. She knows you so well. If she saw something off, I think I'd feel it too. I looked at her, this unexpected, brilliant woman who had walked into my life like a spark and stayed like sunlight. No one knows what's right for me better than me, and I choose you. Every day, I choose you. She leaned in, her lips brushing mine, a whisper against my skin. I choose you too, in every moment that matters. Now, 3 years later, that choice still stands. We've had our challenges, conversations with her parents, moments when the age difference felt real, days of misalignment, but the core of us has held steady. Last week, on the anniversary of that first hike, she proposed. No fanfare. Just the two of us, hiking to Black Balsam Knob at sunrise. At the summit, with the whole world lit in morning gold, she pulled out a small box. I never really believed in soulmates, she said, her voice rich with feeling. But I believe in choosing, in all the quiet, everyday choices that make up a life. And I want to choose you, Karen Whitmore, for all the days we're given. The ring was simple, a rose gold band with a small emerald that shimmered in the light. Yes, I said through happy tears. Yes to all of it. I'm 50 now. Half a century of life behind me, and however many years still ahead remain unwritten. Sometimes I think about the woman I was just 4 years ago. Quiet, dimmed, carefully folded into the narrow space left behind after 18 years with the wrong person. I wish I could reach back and speak to her. I'd tell her it gets better. That joy will return, slowly at first, like morning light creeping across the floor. That one day, without expecting it, she'll be sitting at a table in the park selling old paperbacks, wondering if the sun is too much on her shoulders. And then everything will change. Because a woman with a crooked smile and a box full of kittens will stop in front of her. And their conversation, so ordinary at first, will begin something neither of them could have predicted. I'd tell her that love doesn't always look the way we imagined it. That sometimes it arrives wrapped in laughter and the scent of summer grass, in glances that linger just a little too long, in silences that say everything. That desire can return in unexpected ways. Subtle, electric, not with fireworks, but with warmth that settles deep in the bones. That she will be wanted, seen, and cherished in ways she never thought possible. That the heart can bloom again, even after years of winter. That it's never too late for summer,